For the fourth consecutive year, the Irish picked up a commitment from one of the top quarterback prospects in the country. How Marcus Freeman made it happen and what it means for the future of the quarterback room coming up next.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, and welcome into another edition of Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. And today is Tuesday, June 4th, and thank you for getting your day started right here by making this your first listen of the day. I'm the host, Tyler Wojciak. I'm a Notre Dame alum and producer at Fox Sports, and you can watch this show on YouTube or you can listen wherever you get your podcasts. If you are watching along on YouTube, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, or if you're on the go and you're listening to the pod, please take a moment, rate the show 5 stars, leave a review, and of course, subscribe. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, let's talk some recruiting. Today, we got recruiting analyst Eric Thomas from Irish Illustrated on the show for the very first time to talk about the commitment of 4-star quarterback Noah Grubbs and what it means for the class of 2026 and beyond, plus a comprehensive breakdown of Notre Dame's Irish Invasion event. The Irish hosted a bunch of top prospects from around the country over the weekend, and it was a great opportunity for the staff to evaluate these guys up close and personal, and there are several key takeaways, and we cover it all with Eric right now. All right, I'm here with recruiting analyst Eric Thomas from Irish Illustrated, and let's start with the headline coming out of the weekend. The Irish landed a commitment from 4-star quarterback Noah Grubbs in the class of 2026, and this is a big deal for a bunch of different reasons. Obviously, quarterbacks are always going to garner the most attention, and Grubbs is really talented. He is the 10th-ranked quarterback in the class, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite. So, how is Notre Dame able to land Grubbs so early on in the process?
Yeah, it was a really diligent effort. They targeted him pretty early. I know that Notre Dame, when they were going through the process of the 2026 quarterbacks, early on they really centered in on Grubbs for really his arm talent, and then Brady Hart for similar reasons. I think ultimately Notre Dame was open to kind of both prospects, but ultimately Grubbs was willing to pull the trigger, and that is such a massive factor when it comes to just getting these classes set up. Guys who are willing to make those moves early. I think they really made a great impression with everyone in his circle. That's really the takeaway that I have. It wasn't just a win with Noah himself, but it seems like the whole Notre Dame staff did an excellent job of getting his family excited on board, getting his private quarterback coach on board, and it seems like it was really just a full scale effort to really integrate themselves into his circle and ultimately create a comfortability that allowed him to commit early.
Yeah, you basically led me right to my next question because Notre Dame was down to 2 quarterback prospects in the class, Noah Grubbs, and the other highly touted prospect from Florida, Brady Hart. And Hart visited Notre Dame back in April, and at one point, it seemed like he was the favorite to be the quarterback commit in this class. And you said that Grubbs was willing to make that decision sooner. Do you think that the staff was in a position where they would have been happy with either one, or do you think that they had a preference?
Yeah, public facing, I think, they probably had a preference, but realistically, I think it was pretty close. In terms of their ceilings, they're very similar prospects, although where they are now is different. Hart's definitely, a little bit more mobile. He just uses his legs a little bit more, kind of spontaneously as like a scrambler. He can do a little bit more of the design run stuff. However, they're both more like it's about the passing acumen, right? I think of the two, Grubbs definitely has the better arm talent, just like naturally. He also has better velocity on the ball. He can really, really rip it, and we saw that at Irish Invasion this weekend. I think honestly, when you're looking at prospects like that, it's really a question of, do you want to take the guy who has a little bit more in the natural gift category, or do you want to take the guy who looks like maybe he has a little bit more time working on touch throws? Ultimately, you're kind of splitting hairs at that point, and you got to just take the guy who you think is going to give you the most immediate impact in building your class.
Yeah, I think with the way recruiting is now, you want to get guys committed early, especially at the quarterback position. Those guys commit early and often. And now, Notre Dame is on a run here. This is the 4th consecutive 4-star quarterback that they've landed since Marcus Freeman took over as head coach. First, it was Kenny Minchie in the class of 2023, then C.J. Carr in 2024, Deuce Knight in 25, and now Noah Grubbs in 26. Deuce has the highest grade of any of the 4 on the composite ranking. That could change. He still has 1 more year left of high school. But these are 4 really talented guys. The problem is, and to be clear, this is a good problem to have, Only
Yes.
one quarterback can play at a time. So based on what you've gathered and talking to some of these guys, what has been the message from Marcus Freeman, Mike Denbrock, and the offensive staff to these quarterback recruits about their plan once they get to campus, given all the competition that's going to be in that room?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, even just to kind of dive into the earlier point you made before I answer the question, I think that it's important to look at this in context. I did an article last week where I looked back at Notre Dame's recruiting at quarterback specifically since Brady Quinn. And this is the best stretch of quarterback recruiting that Notre Dame's had since, I think it was the 2006 to 2008 or 2005 to 2008 window. I mean, it was really significant, the gaps that they had in the time in between. And now kind of pairing that with like what the message is. Ultimately, I think Notre Dame understands that part of what they have to sell is in their messaging. Choose hard. They have to sell that competition. They have to sell the idea that if we want to get NFL caliber quarterbacks here, and if we want to be able to get guys that we think have that potential here in numbers, so that ultimately when you have the coin flips, you get some of them that come up the right way, you have to be able to sell the idea that that competition is going to put guys in a better position. Um, Everything else that Notre Dame offers is obviously of significant value sort of outside the football side, and that's always going to be a factor. But with quarterbacks specifically for the on-field recruiting component, there is just such a necessity to be able to say, look, we're stacking up this talent. We may not have the recent, track record of high NFL draft picks, but we're building to that. We're tangibly building to that. And I think with Kenny Minchie kind of being the first guy to get the ball rolling, he was such a good starting place because he was a prospect that was committed to Pittsburgh. And a lot of folks nationally were like, what is this kid doing going to Pittsburgh? Like, he's really good. And then Notre Dame came in and things maybe felt a little bit more of a fit for him. The guys who have followed that, it's just a testament to the way they've built. Kenny Minchie is no slouch in his own right, and he very much looks like a guy who is on the outside looking in, with the future kind of coming up behind him, and with Riley Leonard coming in, Steve Angeli still continue to ascend, although it seems like Angeli's probably the more likely to leave out of the bunch. But look, it's a really unique situation that they've been able to build for themselves relative to recent Notre Dame history. And ultimately, I think if Notre Dame is going to pitch to recruits that they take themselves seriously as a championship contending program, this is not like a value add or a benefit. This is a necessity for them to get to that point.
Absolutely. And I've made this point countless times that even when you get the highly touted quarterback prospect, it's honestly a coin flip most of the time, whether or not they're going to work out and be the player that we all hope to be. And that's why when CJ Carr and sort of his lead up to coming to Notre Dame, I was like, yeah, I really like him. Have no idea if he's going to work out at Notre Dame. Like, I don't have to remind you of the history of the highly touted quarterback prospects to come through Notre Dame who haven't panned out. But I want to just throw a couple names at you. This is from the class of 2022. These are the top 5 quarterbacks. So all of these guys are going to be entering their third year with the program. Number 1, according to the 24/7 composite rankings, Drew Aller, who's been okay.
Yeah.
Cade Klubnik, Connor Weldman went to Texas A&M, Ty Simpson at Bama, and Devin Brown at Ohio State. Like, these are top quarterback prospects. Now, I'm not saying that like all top quarterback prospects aren't going to work out. That's just one class. If you go to the year before, like Quinn Ewers has certainly panned out. But I think it's just the nature of the beast. So now that Notre Dame has been able to stack these good quarterback prospects year in and year out, it obviously bodes well for the program. I'm just happy I'm not the person or the recruiter that has to convince these guys to come in when I got Deuce Knight the year ahead of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I think I texted to you, watching Deuce and Noah together, it was a little unfair to Noah in the mobility drills. Deuce moves like an alien, man. And getting guys to come in behind him is a massive, massive task. So full credit to the Notre Dame staff for not kind of falling back into that pitfall that we saw in the kind of the last 20 years, where it's like, all right, we got our guy. Let's look at a 3-star. We'll bring him in. It's a nice, easy box to check. We got our guy. Nope. They said, you know what? We're going to go back out. We're going to find someone that can directly compete with Deuce Knight and ultimately is going to push him to be better. And what more can you ask for?
We'll be back with Eric in a moment to talk about his biggest takeaways from Notre Dame's Irish Invasion event. But first, I wanted to tell you about LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs is the tool to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. Speaking from my own experience, I know that whenever we're looking to make a new hire, we use LinkedIn to help find the perfect new team member, and it's so easy because they do the heavy lifting. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. They've got a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get qualified candidates within 24 hours. It's why owners rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Deuce Knight and Noah Grubbs were on campus this weekend for Notre Dame's Irish Invasion event. Before we get into the specifics, can you just explain what Irish Invasion is and why it's such an important event?
Yeah. So Irish Invasion is actually one of a number of different regional, or I should say national or international camps that Notre Dame hosts. Basically, yesterday it was like 130 something prospects that come from all over the country. I think there was 4 kids from Canada. They get an opportunity to do a number of different activities directly in front of the coach. So it opens up with them doing like athletic testing. Most guys were doing, I think it was the 3-cone, broad jump, vertical. They did that in waves. And then they switched to position specific drills. So everyone gets a chance to work with their position group coaches, or for some guys, kind of across multiple groups, get some direct one-on-one coaching, do a couple different drills that really kind of showcase their athletic ability before they dive into the on-field stuff, which is important because these camps are organized in a way where it's tailored to, hey, we are going to put guys that we like in certain jerseys and guys that we know in certain jerseys. And if someone stands out in the early part of the testing, well, they might just change their jersey color before they get on the field. So some of that stuff does actually matter. That did happen yesterday with a defensive line prospect whose name is now escaping me, but I will find it. So there are opportunities for guys to kind of move into the picture at this camp. But primarily what it serves as is it's an opportunity for kids, especially young kids, to come and get on the radar on the one hand. And then sort of on the other side of things, it's an opportunity for kids who are maybe going into their junior or senior years. 2025, I guess I would call, they're out of their senior or going, they're seniors now. It gives them an opportunity to kind of check the boxes. If there are still questions, like there was a couple 2025 receivers and linemen who may end up in the class. It seems like maybe they were more options than targets, if you will. But it seems like Notre Dame had them there to really make sure they understood the athleticism, the physicality, and see the improvements they made in the offseason. So it's just a great sort of check-in in the summer months, especially out ahead of official visit season and then leading into the season, for the coaches to cast a really wide net and really prime themselves for upcoming recruiting cycles, as well as sort of odds and ends for the current one.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, these coaches don't really have that many chances to evaluate these guys up close and personal due to NCAA rules and restrictions. But even if you aren't able to give me like an exact number breakdown, how many players are invited to Irish Invasion, and how is it dispersed among the different classes? Because I know it's a good opportunity to get those young guys in, but also there were a couple guys who are a little bit older, like Deuce Knight, like Elijah Burris, who've been around and have already committed to Notre Dame.
Yeah, so I'm pulling up a sheet here in the background. So it looks like there was like 30 to 40-ish kids that were sort of on the "we have our eyes on you walking in the door" list. Some of those kids didn't make it, so the number is a little bit, a little bit unsettled. But so the vast majority of the prospects are kids that either pay their way to come here, or they heard about the camp, or whatever else. So it is not the majority that are here by invite to the coaches. It kind of makes it interesting because you'll have all these kids working out together. And let me tell you, the poor kids who had to run the 40 after like Deuce Knight or after Elijah Burris or any of those guys, oh my God, it was just not fair. You're watching these kids and you're like, I know you're a freshman, but like, whoa, that was just not the best look for you, man.
All right, I have a funny story. I don't even know if I've told this on the podcast before. So when I was in high school, me and like 7 of my teammates went to the Notre Dame football camp. Now, it was a lot different back then. This is back in 2013. And
early days.
Yeah, you could just go in. It wasn't like very super selective, but there were some kids there who were really good, and you knew that Notre Dame was looking to offer them. So I remember on the first day of camp, my best friend was a tight end, and after the first practice, he comes up to me and goes, "Dude, there's this kid. He's from Vegas. He's literally the best football player I've ever seen." And that was the last practice of the day. The next day we go back out there, and then I watch him. He, instead of running routes with the tight ends, he comes over to the wide receivers and starts running them with us, and instantly just dominating everyone. Huge dude. That player was Alize Mack.
Yep.
And he got an offer from Notre Dame that day and ended up committing to Notre Dame. And it was just so funny, like being at a camp like that. And again, it's different now. This was back when, anyone could sign up. And like the reason so many kids from my high school went is because Tony Alford was still the coach at the time, or coaching the running backs, and my high school coach and Tony had a really good relationship. So anyway, long story short there, it is really funny when you get to see the kids who are like on that level compared to just your average high school football player, and the disparity is pretty clear.
Absolutely. No, it was a ton of fun. And, I got to say, I was really impressed with the freshman class that was there. A lot of times when you see freshmen, the functional play strength just isn't there. And it comes out in the drills, it comes out in the one-on-ones, and guys kind of struggle to get open against older players, or they struggle to get off blocks against older players. And there's just like an almost element of this, like, it's not fair for this kid. He's just not there yet, right? But glad he's here, whatever else. This year, there was so many impressive freshmen. It was really kind of eye-opening how many talented kids got on campus for 2027. Now, I'm not insinuating that 2027 is like this freakishly talented class. I won't even say necessarily that freshmen are getting more talented, because I think that's well known. It's not like an original thought. But like, Notre Dame is doing a really good job of evaluating these kids early and getting them on campus. There was at least 2 kids in the 2027 class there that are going to be 5 stars. Bet on it.
So you kind of have led me into it a little bit. Who are some of the biggest standouts in your mind?
Yeah. Number one standout for me, just like I could not believe what I was seeing. Freshman corner, Larry Moon III. This dude is nuts. He walked in, he just started getting ready. He was all business. It was like basically silent, just like putting on his cleats. Like everyone else talk with their family, their dads are giving them last minute advice. Like, remember, you got to keep your toes in, and remember, you don't want to go too wide. This kid was just all business. And as soon as he got up to the 3-cone, I didn't watch like the stretches or anything too much, because you don't get too much, but I was looking at the 3-cone and watching guys run, and I saw him run it, and I audibly reacted. I was like, whoa, that was a lot. And then he did it again. It was like, okay, well, green 20. I got to watch this guy. Green 20. My notebook is about a third green 20 notes. Blew it away in the 40. His first 40 was, I think, slightly better than his second. I may have that mixed, but the on-field testing was just like unbelievable. He was going up against a number of older prospects, a number of guys who were also in green jerseys who were older than him. They singled him out to go up against Elijah Burris at one point. They singled him out to go up against Jameer Averett Brown, who was one of the freshmen there. It was really remarkable how comfortable he was in transition, how easily he was able to lock onto receivers' hips and just kind of transition his weight to get to full speed. It was really remarkable to watch. A similar guy, same line, got a direct comparison. Braylon Womack, the 5-star in 2026. I compared him last week, not so much in play style, but just in terms of like sheer star power, to Zachariah Branch, because watching him on film, he's the guy that, like, you can be there to watch someone else entirely. You will not take your eyes off him. He's just that explosive. He's just that fun to watch. He bared that out in camp. He had a little bit of a slow start in the one-on-ones. He lost like 5 reps in a row, but I'll be honest, like 2 of those were just ridiculous catches. It was like guys making diving grabs on the sideline and stuff. After that, he settled in. I don't know if he lost another rep the rest of the day. So he's coming off a hamstring injury. It's his first workout since. He was really, really impressive, and his athletic ability just like jumps off the page. In terms of some other notable performers, I have been high on Elijah Burris for a minute. I know he's a 3-star. I refuse to acknowledge it. That kid is a 4-star player. I saw it again on Sunday. His footwork is just supreme. He is so quick in short spaces. He's excellent at creating separation as a result of that. And we've used the word twitch to describe him, which is really just how much you can limit your amount of movement needed to create changes in direction or cuts. And he's excellent at it. He's just so sudden. He's so decisive as soon as he makes a move. And he also looked like he should have absolutely tripped over his own feet and just eaten it into the turf like 4 or 5 times. And he didn't. He came up with the ball every time. I remarked to Tim Priest at one point, I was like, it is amazing that he has not ended up on the ground yet. A few other guys that I think are worth mentioning, especially in the athletic testing. I said it earlier, Deuce Knight's an alien. It is unbelievable. His 3-cone, his broad, they were really good. I don't want to underscore. his 40, I giggled like a maniac after he ran it. We hand timed him at 4.32. He should not be able to run that fast. He's 6'5", and it looks ridiculous because his legs are so long and they're moving so fast. It's like a picture of Bigfoot. He's just moving in the background, blurry. He was unbelievable to watch. His mobility in the passing drills as well, really excellent. I knew this from watching his film, but seeing him throw across his body to the right while he's on the move, he is just so natural, and it looks so effortless. There was a couple throws where it was just like, okay, yep, that's 5-star. Like, and you just kind of can't believe what you're seeing there. In terms of some other guys that I think answer some solid questions, I wrote in a board post last night. Dom Hulak can move, man. I kind of not had questions about him as a player, but I more had some questions about just kind of what it would look like, his athleticism and his movement skills. And he answered them. He is fluid. He's able to move well. He runs with kind of a lower center of gravity and pad level, so he stays balanced. I just really, really like everything I've seen from Hulak, and I think this just sort of reinforced that as well. Jameer Averett Brown, he is a 2027 wide receiver. The coaches specifically lined him up against a number of top corners at the event. He had some wins, he had some losses, but he's unbelievable, man. He was so much fun to watch. And Marcus Freeman made an effort to go and talk to him at one point. Sounds like he was checking in on him because of some hamstring issues related to his track season earlier this year. But you could tell. I mean, there was a lot of buzz around him. The coaches all made a point to speak with him. So that was a really good one. And then the last one I want to throw out there, just from kind of this main group here, a guy that really didn't show much in the athletic testing, but once we got out in the field, he was really impressive, was Zachary Washington. I previewed him last week, and I liked his film. I thought that he did some really good things, especially as sort of a deep threat and just um, using his ability to kind of get vertical separation. Sometimes that would be on in routes and stuff, but he would kind of separate over the top and then cut over. So it's an interesting skill set. He in the athletic testing, there was a couple times where it was like, I don't know, he's not quite with the other guys. I don't know if he's quite there. And then as soon as we got out in the field, he's just like wide open and making catches over guys. And it's like, oh, there it is. Okay, that's why he's in a green jersey. So, it was really a lot of fun to be able to go out and see a lot of these guys succeed. There was a lot of different moments where guys stand out. But in terms of just full body of work, I think those are the ones that are really worth highlighting.
Okay, that was great. I have a couple follow-ups there.
Sure.
I'm glad you brought up Larry Moon. I actually got a text from a family member of mine who lives out in Western PA, worked for a high school football team for a few years, actually texted me this morning saying the Irish are tapping into the Alakippa pipeline. I said, Larry Moon, yeah, he's a stud. And he said, Alakippa kids always have a certain dog about them. So I'm not too surprised to hear that Larry Moon was such a standout. Hulak is very interesting. I think he might be one of the most interesting prospects in this class because he's so versatile, but yet it's like, well, what is he going to be in college? So it's good to hear that he was pretty impressive at this Irish invasion camp. And one other thing this is applicable to basically any recruiting camp. It's a great opportunity for the staff to be up close, watch these guys in person. But the problem is they're not wearing pads, and that's obviously a huge difference, especially for the linemen. So how does the staff go about evaluating these guys in camp settings compared to watching their actual film and their high school career?
Yeah, it's all about markers, right? Ultimately, when you're not doing something at full bore, you have to just take your little windows into what translates. So it depends on different positions. But for example, I watched a lot of wide receivers and DBs. What you're really looking for there, besides, for DB, kind of raw speed is a factor. You're really looking for guys who are able to move, able to transition. So that 3-cone drill is really important, kind of fluid in their ability to make cuts. They're looking for guys who are going to catch the ball. There was a few drops, and Mike Brown reacted audibly. They're looking for guys who aren't going to be holding in these settings, aren't going to be getting penalty markers thrown on them from a camp setting drill. And then when you're looking at sort of like the linemen, they're really looking at a lot of like handwork. They're looking at your speed off the line. They're looking at your ability to kind of recoil once you get hit. Say you're going up against an offensive lineman. Once they get their hands on you, how well do you do with getting your weight put back forward and transition it forward, either using a move or trying to get around them with speed, whatever it is. So there's a number of different little markers that they work with. And ultimately, the imperfect nature of camps, there are going to be guys who, when they put the pads on and they're kind of in that mentality and they're going and they have their full toolkit available to them. There are some guys who maybe would stand out more on the day if they had that opportunity. But ultimately, when you're trying to limit injuries and just give these guys a chance, you just kind of have to look at these individual markers and say, okay, he had, of the 5 data points we're looking at for wide receivers, he hit 4 of them. That tracks. We think this is a translatable prospect.
Eric and I still have more to get to, including his thoughts on what's next for Notre Dame at the wide receiver position in the class of 2025. But I wanted to tell you about FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Okay, here's my pick. We're looking at the NBA Finals here between the Dallas Mavericks and the Boston Celtics. The Mavericks are big underdogs. They're plus 184 to win the series, and even though I think Boston is a better team, Luka Doncic has just been unstoppable so far in the playoffs, and I think that he is going to be enough to propel the Mavericks to an upset win in the series, and they will become the NBA champions. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Marcus Freeman's recruiting strategy is clear. He likes to recruit guys early, build those relationships, and secure those commitments before most other schools. But the potential downside to that is you have to project, and sometimes when your projections don't work out, you have to move on from guys that you liked at one point during the recruiting process while the process is still ongoing. And we saw that this weekend when 3-star wide receiver Sean Terry decommitted from the Irish. It's been reported that this was a mutual decision, and it makes sense. Terry was one of the lowest rated prospects in the class, and Notre Dame is still in the running for a couple really talented wideouts in the class of 2025, like Derek Meadows, Tanu Hines, Dylan Robinson, and a couple others. So with Terry out the door, what do you think will happen next at the receiver position in the class of 2025?
Yeah, look, it's always unfortunate when things kind of play out this way. You never want kids to be caught in these situations, but ultimately, moving forward with it, I think it will end up being for the best for both parties. Now, kind of onto the question in terms of what's next. So there's a number of official visits set for wide receivers. I'm pulling up that list right now so I don't flub the dates. So Dylan Robinson and John Anthony Hall will be here at Notre Dame on June 11th. And Derek Meadows, Talon Taylor, and Tanu Hines will be in South Bend on June 14th. So right there is 5 guys. The lowest ranked of them is actually Tanu Hines. He's sitting at number 347 to give you a sense of kind of the area they're targeting. Meanwhile, Sean Terry was in like the 600s. So when you're looking at sort of what the receiver room is going to do next, it really does look like ultimately this is an opportunity to upgrade. And while Talon Taylor is probably the most one-to-one replacement for Sean Terry skill set wise, kind of build wise, even though he's a little bit bigger, I think the offer of John Anthony Hall coming sort of the night before, or within hours of it all happening, it wasn't a coincidence. Ultimately, I think that's the direction they're going to look at him as a guy who they can put in, that place, and then they can look to grab it, probably 2 more. Ultimately, Meadows is a guy who, no matter how the other guys shuffle, he's number 1 on the board. I think there's a little bit of wiggle room behind him in terms of flavor and kind of what guys want, and where the rankings aren't necessarily as indicative of who's the favorite and who's not. Honestly, of the guys who are left, Tanu Hines is the lowest ranked one. He might be my favorite just because he's so fast. But like, yeah, no, it's a great group of wide receivers that they have available. I would anticipate coming out of the June 11th visits, that first run, we'll probably have some idea of clarity on if at least one of those guys is moving towards committing. I'm not saying they're going to commit on the visit or anything, but ultimately a lot of times guys take these visits, they take 48 hours, they call the coaches, and they do their thing. So I would not be shocked if ultimately things played out that way. Over the course of this weekend, especially with John Anthony Hall, who is very academically focused. He's also considering Northwestern and Stanford. I don't know about most prospects, but given the kind of mess that Stanford's facing with their scheduling right now, unless you're full bore in, like I'm there for the academics, that's probably going to be a little bit of a tough draw for an Indiana kid. And obviously Northwestern's got some stuff going on. So if his focus is academics and football, Notre Dame is easily the most stable situation that's been presented to him.
Yeah, the John Anthony offer was so interesting to me because he's a local kid. He's from Indiana, and the recruiting rankings are all over the map with him. Like on 24/7 Sports, he's just outside the top 50. They have him as the number 8 receiver in the class. But if you look at the composite ranking, which takes into account all the rankings from all the other outlets, he's not even in the top 300 nationally, and they've got him as the 39th ranked receiver. So the fact that Notre Dame was so late to offer him makes me think that they're probably not quite as high on him as, say, 24/7, who has him ranked just outside the top 50. But still, it'll be really interesting to see how it plays out for the wide receiver position. Obviously, Derek Meadows would be a huge, huge get for the Irish. But I want to ask about you for a second here, because you just joined the recruiting beat a couple months ago for Irish Illustrated. You really hit the ground running. I've been impressed with your work, and that's why I'm happy to have you on. But tell us more about your work in the Notre Dame recruiting department and how you eventually ended up covering recruiting full-time.
Yeah, so from February or March of 2017 through May of 2019 when I graduated, I was in a position called Irish Guard recruiting analyst. Basically, like a lot of the folks who work in the office, I was doing like tours for prospects. I was helping out with stuff around the office, just kind of doing everything I could. The Irish Guard component of that meant that I was specifically paired as an assistant with a number of coaches. So early on, I was the direct assistant to Autry Denson, actually one of two. I was kind of like, that was like my training period, if you will. And then ultimately that evolved to me being the assistant for Todd Light and Clark Lee. Bunch of great recruiters I know. So it was a great experience. I mean, they're all really, really great guys. They were great mentors for me. Denson especially took a lot of time to just help me develop my skills with watching film, and I'm eternally grateful for him. He's now a coach on the Arizona Cardinals, represent. Big one of 12 Cardinals fans in the world. So it was just a lot of fun to be in that office. Towards the end of my time there, I developed a really good relationship with pretty much the senior recruiting leadership, especially Aaron Carney, who at that time was the director of recruiting. AK used to basically rely on me as like the go-to for overflow. So for my last year at Notre Dame, I was basically the guy that like I'd get out of class and I'd have like 3 texts, and it'd be like, coach would text me like, hey, I got friends coming into town. Can you tour them? And then I'd have a coach from AK like, hey, Autry's going to text you. Also, I have a tour about 10 minutes after that. Can you tour them? And it's like, yep, I got you. So it was very fluid. It was always just me kind of running around with my hair on fire and doing whatever I could. But I used to have these numbers memorized. I think I ended up working with something like 18 Notre Dame commits as either their official guide or, helping them directly on one of their unofficial visits. So it was a really, really excellent experience, especially for someone like myself who is a lifelong Notre Dame fan. It was just so much fun. After college, I recognized that if I was going to work in a recruiting department, the salaries I was seeing online were not going to pay my bills. So I decided, you know what? I'm young. I have time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move to Maryland. I'm going to live with my best friend, and I'm going to take a job, save money, and work towards this. So that's what I did. I just continued to save money and tried to, put myself in a position to do something like this. Years went by, and, your connections fray a little bit. The hope starts to dwindle, and not even, I want to say probably 3 weeks before Irish Illustrated reached out to me. I actually told my girlfriend, I was like, look, I don't know where it's going to come from. I don't know if it's going to come. It might be time for me to kind of just be at ease with the fact that this is what I'm doing now. I'm a recruiter. I'm recruiting medical personnel, and, that's okay. I'm happy. I'm here. That's fine. A couple weeks later, Kevin Sinclair reached out like, hey, would you be interested? I was like, yes, I would be. Yes. So I jumped on that right away. And it's been the best since, man. It's just been so much fun to work with this team. Kevin and I have been friends for a number of years, dating back to my time at Notre Dame. So, it's just been a really, really sort of easy transition for me. It's something I'm passionate about. It's a great group of guys, and I feel supported every single day. They've clearly invested in me. They're doing everything they can to put me in a position to succeed. And ultimately, man, I'm just really grateful to have an opportunity to be doing what I love with some really, really great people.
This is a very pro Kevin Sinclair podcast. He's a frequent contributor, great friend of the program. So it makes perfect sense that he led you to Irish Illustrated. Okay, last question I have for you. What's the biggest lesson you learned from working with Clark Lee?
I think I learned more about being like a good dad just from spending time around Clark Lee than just about anybody else. When I was his assistant, one of the roles that I would basically take on is a lot of times his kids were around, his wife was around for visits and stuff, but they'd be talking to recruits and things, so they needed someone to watch the kids. So I'd watch his kids while the recruits were talking with him. And just the way that he was so always supportive and just a silly example at one point. Walked into the room to grab something, walked back out. 5 seconds, kids were left unsupervised. His daughter had started to comb the hair of the carpet with a fork. It was very strange. And Clark walks out and he looks at her, he goes, "Oh, honey, you combing the floor?" And he was just so supportive and she was so excited to share it with him. And it was just like a really cute moment. But it was just like these little reminders of just how to be supportive, how to treat people. Um, I loved working with Coach Lee. He's just one of the most genuine, kind-hearted people, and I took away so much about how to carry myself, conduct myself, treat other people from him. And I like to think that a lot of these things before. I have good role models, but he is just such a holistically, he's a good man, and I was just really, really lucky to be able to work with him and learn from him.
Yeah, that actually checks out with everything I have ever heard about Clark Lee. All right, be sure to read up on all of Eric's work at Irish Illustrated. You can also listen to his podcast, Tracking the Trail with Kevin Sinclair, for all the latest on Notre Dame recruiting. Eric, thanks for doing this, man. Best of luck in a very busy month ahead, and I'll talk to you again soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'll look forward to the next time here.
All right, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish your first listen of the day. I will be right back here tomorrow morning. In the meantime, remember to subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, and give us a follow on social media. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning.